MMA.
MMA, guys. Okay.
I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. So 15 Cardozo, K-A-R-D-O-Z-O.
That's 15 Cardozo, son.
In capitals, George, what the fuck? Diaz has
Verbatim.
the edge on striking area. He did win. And I love how Diaz now says that he lost the fight because he had blurred vision. You lost the fight because you and your brother are the least adaptable fighters in the UFC. You guys have your game plan. You're sticking to it. And when shit doesn't go well, it doesn't matter because you continue to stick with your game plan.
Right.
Somebody told me, so what would you do? I don't know. I'd stop sticking my lead leg out there and playing that motherfucker firmly in the ground and letting him kick that some bitch like he was kicking for the Cowboys. He fucking punched him in the thigh.
He punched. Honestly, it was watching that fight, and we'll get to the other fights, everybody, but Benson Henderson toyed with Nate Diaz. It was not even close.
And there was at no point where I felt worried for Benson Henderson, not even on the ground.
No. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, somebody be like, oh, no. If we sat there at the end of the fight, and everybody who was watching the fight, we said 50-45, Benson Henderson.
That's what I said.
Now, Joey, my buddy, goes like this. He goes, there's a couple rounds. I'd give him 8s. And we were like, but Joey, he's like, I don't give a fuck. He was so dominant and everything. And Bobby and I were sitting there going, I don't know, man. And he, sure enough, one judge gave him 2.
50-43.
Yeah.
Benson just dominated from opening bell to end bell. And Nate wasn't throwing as many punches.
Did you say opening bell to end? Oh, end bell. I thought you said end bell. It's like, I don't know anything.
Opening bell to end bell.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I got you. Go ahead, continue.
Nate Diaz just wasn't even throwing punches like he normally would.
Yeah.
And I think all that stemmed from that lead leg getting just chopped down early. And he didn't switch stances. Like, switch your feet, do something, anything.
Where he outclassed him is he beat him in his own game. I mean, he was throwing leg kicks and taking him out, punching him in his leg. And this is the thing, man. Benson Henderson is a big-ass lightweight. He was physically just manhandling him. On the ground, he's like, you're not going to get me in a submission, son. I'm going to hold you up against the cage. I'm going to do what I want. You're going to try to get me in an ankle lock. I'm going to get the fuck out of it. It looked like it looked almost comical. And that's taking nothing away from Nate Diaz because he's a great fighter.
Now, as people have watched this show and they fully understand, I'm not the biggest fan of GSP, but let me tell you, if Benson Henderson just did that against Nate, GSP will destroy Nick Diaz.
Yeah.
Destroy Nick Diaz. If Nick Diaz comes out and fights the same way his little brother just fought Benson Henderson, he doesn't have a shot in hell at beating GSP.
Yeah.
Because, dude, you can't duplicate the speed and power of Benson Henderson, and you cannot going to be able to duplicate GSP's speed. GSP is going to get in, back up, because both Nate and Nick do that slow plotting. They just plot along.
Yeah.
And they just make this big circle, and they leave their lead leg.
Such unorthodox boxers, and they can keep you off balance with their jab. But the thing
There's nothing behind it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I will say this, and people might say, and raise an eyebrow at this. Benson Henderson is super athletic, too. Like, I mean, he's a little more slippery to me than GSP. GSP's a better wrestler, but...
Don't worry, GSP's going to take off the next 3.5 years to get ready for Nick.
That's a very valid point.
That Bama said he needs a year off.
That Bama said...
A year off. He just had a year off, had a long fight, and he wants another year off. He's not going to fight till next summer.
Ridiculous,
I'm just like,
man.
Come on, man.
Now, let's move to some of the other fights.
Do we have to?
Alexander Gustafsson defeated
a monster.
Maurice. He's good.
He's looking even better. Now, the big rumor about him is he might have to fill in for a injured Dan Henderson. Dan Henderson's supposed to fight Machida, but they're saying Dan Henderson's knee still isn't right, and Gustafsson is one of the lead people to take over the fight for him.
I'm going to tell you
Machida.
what. Machida's a fucking guy you got to really prepare for. He will knock your ass out.
I wouldn't take him on short notice.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't take him on short notice. Not the way, because Gustafsson already had that loss against
Phil Davis.
Phil Davis, and you know what? If he didn't fucking get that loss, he'd have been in great position to fucking get a title shot. But anyway, look, go ahead.
This win. And then one more win, he'll be right there fighting John Jones.
Right.
I don't think he can beat John Jones, but it puts him there.
But for him to go ahead and get a unanimous decision over someone like Shogun Rua was very impressive.
Yeah, he looked good.
He did everything he had to. Another Rory MacDonald, and you know what?
Fucking robot. He has no personality. He's the only guy who got to do an interview besides Benson, who all wanted to do is talk about Jesus Christ. No offense, but save that shit for Sunday.
I love that.
Rory.
I love. It's almost like he was fucking with Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan's straight atheist, and it was like he was just sitting there and he was asking him and talking to him, asking about his toothpick, and Benson Henderson was like, "Yeah, just talking about things that were important in life. He was completely dismissing, and I kind of got a kick out of that, to be honest. We were all like giggling on the couch.
And Rory MacDonald went, I want to avenge my last loss against you non-personality having motherfucker. You should get somebody to speak for you.
I'm going to tell you
what. You're 24 and you got the personality of a fucking cinder block.
If there's an MMA fighter that everybody is growing to dislike very fast, it's got to be Rory MacDonald. I don't know how many people. People just don't like the guy. You know what I mean? Because he's got this sense of like arrogance to him. Am I imagining that, everybody?
Nay.
But I'm going to tell you what. Put that shit aside. That is a talented motherfucker.
Oh yeah,
he's nasty.
Condit, I wouldn't be in a big hurry if I was Condit.
No, because he had Condit until Condit caught him at the end.
So how long till MacDonald goes fights at 185? Because that some bitch is huge.
I don't see him doing it.
I wouldn't either. I'd wait for GSP to hang up the belt and then hold the belt at 170 forever. As long as he can make weight, because mind you, he's only 24.
He really, we all know BJ Penn. I mean, obviously he has so much range on BJ Penn, but he really kept BJ Penn off the bat. I mean, his hands. I would love to see him fight GSP.
But it won't happen. They're in the same camp.
And it can't happen. I mean, it probably
no, it won't happen because they're both vagina boys. Huh? If they were men, they'd fight each other. But don't worry, they're not. They're from Canada.
If it did happen, Rory MacDonald would be too old. He'd be 40.
Yeah.
Because it's it's a lot of time in between fights.
Exactly. You got to rest up and really study your opponent.
Would you like to have another really?
Really. Okay. There's nothing to study about Nate Diaz. He puts his lead leg out, he does this shit, and that's it.
At you.
Yep.
Yeah.
You fucking drill him in the face 3 times, take him down. Ask Benson Henderson. He just laid out the diagram how to beat the Diaz brothers because they both fight exactly the same and they don't adapt.
Now.
And I like the Diaz brothers. I really do. I think they're entertaining.
I like them. I mean, they're fun. I think they're
Who else doesn't want to see a cutaway aerial shot of the ring because he's going like this?
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, Mike Swick, what do you think about him?
Sleepy time.
Yeah, he was snoring. Matt Brown looked really good.
Yeah.
The thing about Matt Brown is he's one of these guys that sometimes he looks just phenomenal. Like he could be a top guy in his class.
He's had a lot of time off, Swick. So he gets a couple more fights.
Now, this is a question I have for somebody out there. Swick looked very drawn and weak. That's the first thing we saw. He was very lean. His physique looked great, but he looked like way too light.
I bet he came in way too heavy. Right. I bet he did not do his cut right.
Right. He just did not look. He looked tired and weak, but
he looked like he came from a certain camp.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, with that said, how about you guys tell us what you thought of the card?
What'd you think about your boy Ramsey?